So let's dive into default now. So how did you meet the other members and where did the idea of all of you guys coming together to form a band start?
Well, I was the last guy to join. Um, the guys had a band before. Oh, here's a band name for you. The guys had a band. This was Jeremy and Danny. They had a band called Enema. All right, so there you go. That's the winner today. That's I think that's even worse than Champy. But anyways, they parted ways with their singer, and Dallas was a buddy of theirs from high school, and nobody knew that he could sing. He'd never sang in a band before, right? And he was just like, well, maybe can I try out? And he did, and he was amazing. And then that's when, they had worked with Chad before this, uh, with the band Anima, and it just didn't really go anywhere. They brought this demo tape to Chad. Chad was like, "Now, what does this guy look like?" And
For our
after he saw
listeners,
that,
you're talking about Chad Kroger of Nickelback, right?
yes, yes, yeah, correct. And he obviously, like, Dallas is he's a handsome man, and he can sing like nobody else, right? He's he is one of the best singers in rock and roll. Like in country, like he's just one of the best singers. He's got in my opinion, he's got one of the best voices. It's a pleasant voice to listen to, but he's also so proficient at it. And he was right off the bat. Like he's just a one take Jake. He no time in the studio, he just lay it down like that, right? And it just comes natural to him. So when you listen to that first Default record, he hadn't even been singing a year yet, right? Um, so anyways, after that, after they did the demo, which was uh, pretty much the Fallout, it was 80% of that record. Um, then they parted ways with their bass player, and I worked with Jeremy. I worked with him at Coastal Ford. Both him and I were parts drivers. So whenever we'd pull
That's so
up to the,
random.
it is, whenever we pull up to the warehouse, we would always talk about our bands. We'd talk about music, and we really bonded that way. And and then he came out and watched my band play one night, and then so when they parted ways with their bass player, he called me up and asked me to join. And at first, I turned them down. And I said no because I just finished recording a record with my band, and I had just gone and done a tour, a small tour to Winnipeg and back, and things were starting to roll with my band, right? And I thought we had potential, and but I was like, you know what? I should go jam with these guys and just see if there's chemistry there. And I did. And the third rehearsal I had with those guys was in Danny's bedroom in front of Chad Kruger, in front of Jonathan Simpkin, who owns 604 Records with Chad. He was the band's lawyer, and in front of Lenny Johnson, who was the A&R guy for TVT Records. And it was one of the most nerve-wracking days of my life. But it worked out. And I remember, like, I barely knew the songs, right? And we got through, I don't know, we probably did maybe about a half a dozen songs or so. And then after we were done playing, Lenny looked at the guys and said, I don't know what you guys think of this guy personally, but he's a great bass player. And I was like, ooh, okay, right on. And then they took us out, they got us drunk, took us out for dinner, and I was like, I'm in, I'm quitting my band. And yeah, I jumped ship then, and it broke my heart. Like it was the hardest thing for me to do, right? Like I remember.
Were you really good friends with the other members of that band as well? So it's not just that there's a band with potential that you're leaving and that you had already invested time and effort, but that you're going to break the hearts of other or let other people down that you care about.
Absolutely. Like I moved from Kelowna with these guys, right? So we made that big move together. We all lived in a house together at one point. Um, and I like to think of myself as a loyal person. Doesn't sound like it right now though, does it? But but it did. It broke my heart. I cried. I cried when I told them that, I need to try this out, guys. Like they've got record label interest. And, it really feels good with these guys. And so, they gave me their blessing and, I parted ways with them. And luckily I'm still friends with all of them today. They were pretty pissed at me, at the beginning. And I don't blame them, right? Like things were happening and then I up and decided to leave. It's not a good feeling, right? So, but it all worked out in the end. And man, I would have been kicking myself if I had have still been driving that parts van and I had have been listening to Default on the radio and knowing that I had my chance there and didn't take it.
Has there ever been three more powerful people in someone's bedroom than that example you just gave?
Man, no, not in Danny's bedroom, anyways. Not that I know of.
Yeah, that's wild. What's the story behind the band name? Is there something deep there, or is it just a random name you decided on?
Nothing too deep. The band was called The Fallout, which is the name of the first
Oh,
record.
that's cool.
Yeah, but when we went to register it, um, realized that it was taken. So just a bunch of names got put in a hat, and I believe it was Jeremy was the one that came up with Default, and that one was the best one out of the bunch. And I'm glad that that's the one that it was because I don't know, I just think it's a cool band name, right? The word comes up all the time, so. It it was just meant to be, I suppose.
It's also nice when a band can get a shorter name so it's bigger on posters. If your theory of a dead man and it's like you have all these small words you got to fit in there. So I remember U2 chose U2 because they're like, what is the actual smallest word that we can fit to maximize on a poster?
Yeah, yeah, smart. The only thing that's kind of plagued us with that name is it default or default? And we don't really have the answer for that except for, when a crowd's chanting the band name at the end of the night, it sounds so much better when it's default, default rather than default, default.
You know, what's funny is I actually realized when I started preparing for this and I started saying the band name out loud, I realized like, oh, there's two potential ways to say this. Like I have to say it the proper way. So I actually sent you a voice note asking, is it this way or this way? But then I was able to find some interviews and I pronounced it the way I saw you pronounce it in your interviews, but some of the other members of the band pronounce it the other way. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stick with the person that I'm interviewing because if he says it that way, then at least it'll work for this interview.
Yeah, it really all depends. Just, how, I mean, sometimes I call it default and sometimes I call it default, right? I don't think it's really much of a conscious thing, to be honest.
And when you guys got together in 1999, what did the music scene look like at that time? And who were the bands that influenced you guys as a collective? So you mentioned when you were younger, the influences that you specifically had, but then when you form a band, there's three other guys that are bringing in their influences as well that work with the band as a whole.
Yeah, well, we all have very different musical tastes. Me being a little bit older and coming from, the 80s background, I didn't see eye to eye with some of the guys on my musical tastes, but we all had some common ground, right? Like, we all love Big Sugar, right? We were all fans of that band. We were all big Wreck fans. Um, you know, like bands like Zeppelin, stuff like that. Like I said, I wasn't a big fan, didn't know much of their music until being in Default, but you start hanging out with people and their influences start rubbing off on you, right? Um, but yeah, at that point in time, like when I first moved here, the bands that were starting to make a noise were Nickelback, obviously, um, a band called Jar, and a band called Noise Therapy. And those were like the three bands in town that I was looking at anyways. Those were the ones that I looked up to and was like, yeah, these guys are cool, right? There's something going on with these bands. Um, there were a lot of good bands here at that time. The music scene was it was thriving. It was great, right? Um, and there's still good bands here, obviously, but there's something in the water at that point, right? And man, it was exciting. It was super exciting, like just getting to see like getting to see firsthand, where Nickelback came from. And the buzz that was happening about them. Nobody knew that, in a couple of years they were going to be the biggest band on the planet, right? But how cool is that to be like shoulder to shoulder with these guys, playing in the clubs with them, and and then them taking our hand and bringing us along for that ride, like right place at the right time, knowing the right people. It was magic. Like I listened to those records, I listened to The State, and oh, I love that record just because of that feeling when I put it on, and just that feeling of like, oh, something's happening. Something's going on. And like I said, you just didn't know that it was going to be that big.
And that album, The State, at that point, they were still pretty grungy. They didn't have the extra level of polish that came in with Silver Side Up, the next album. I actually saw Nickelback in 2000 or maybe earlier. I saw them open for Everclear to just maybe 2,000 people or 1,000 people in Ottawa. So it's so cool. I saw them way back then. I saw them a few years ago, an amazing quadruple bill with Seether, Bush, and 3 Days Grace. How awesome is that? And then they just headlined Blues Fest here in Ottawa in the last couple of years. And, seeing them 20 plus years ago where they're opening for Everclear for like 1,000 people and then seeing them now where they're headlining to 40,000 people. It's so cool to see the longevity and the journey that they've been on.
It's wild, isn't it? Well, I got a story for you here. When I was leaving Kelowna, when I was moving from there, we had a farewell party, and we were doing pretty good there. We could sell out the clubs there, and that's why we decided to move to Vancouver because we're like, can't can't make it happen here in Kelowna. We've got to do the move where it's all happening, right? So we were playing at this club called Side Effects, and we sold the place out. And down the street at Flashbacks, Nickelback was playing the same night, and they had, I believe, 12 people in the audience. And I told Chad this story years later, right? And he just looks at me all deadpan and goes, "Who won now?" And I'm like, "Damn it. Damn it, Chad, just give me this one, would
He's
you?"
got the Trump card. Yeah. Yeah. He's got the get out of jail free card for life, I think.
He does. Yeah. Yeah.
You guys record the demo with the help of Chad Kroger. You guys signed to TVT Records. Now, TVT is an independent label, but they're one of the biggest in the world. They had 25 albums that had gone gold or platinum. I'm talking Nine Inch Nails, Ja Rule, Dashboard Confessional, Snoop Dogg, Little John. They had some of the biggest artists in the world.
Pitbull.
What's that? Pitbull?
Pitbull. Yeah.
And was it important for you guys to sign with a label that could focus on countries outside of Canada? Because if you sign with a Canadian label, it's like their focus on Canada. And even if you go platinum, it's 80,000 copies or 100,000 copies. But when you're on a label in the States and they're putting the machine behind you, suddenly you're platinum and it's a million copies sold.
Yeah, that was important to us at the time. We, being successful here in your own country is obviously extremely important, and Canada has been nothing but amazing to us. But, we wanted to work, right? We just wanted to get out there and we wanted to play to as many people as possible. And, I want to see the world, right? Like, and what better way to do that than to play music, and to travel and to get to do with what you love and that be the vehicle, right? So yeah, it was important to us.
So I've seen Chad in interviews mention that one of his biggest regrets was helping you guys sign to TVT and go on to sell, 1 to 2 million albums when he helped guide you along into this other label's arms where you went and sold millions of albums. And it was actually that process that made him realize, wait, I should start my own label. And it's you guys are the inspiration behind 604 Records, which is Chad Kroger's label with Joey and you mentioned the lawyer as well there, Simkin. What was it?
Jonathan Simkin, yeah.
Simkin. And they've gone on to have Carly Rae Jepsen and Theory of a Dead Man and Mariana's Trench, and eventually Dallas Smith signs as a country singer for them as well. Is there a part of you that's super proud of the fact that your example led to all this success for other Canadian bands as well?
Absolutely, yeah. It was cool. We got that question a lot though. The misconception was that we were on 604 Records, which, we never were. Like you said, we were the reason why 604 started. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing to say, that our success led to that. And you know what? I mean, our ties to 604, Danny and I, we have our own record label called Rock is Dead Records, and we are distributed by 604 Records. So, we still have strong ties with Jonathan and all the people there. So, it's a big family for sure.
So let's talk about the band's discography. So in 2001, you guys released the debut album, The Fallout. This goes to number one on Billboard's independent album chart in the US. It goes platinum in Canada and the US, selling over 1.5 million copies. There's four singles: Wasting My Time, Deny, Live a Lie, and Sick and Tired. What thoughts, memories, emotions come back to you now when you think back to that album that really kickstarted this journey that you've been on for the last 25 years?
Um, yeah, there again, you listen to that album and it brings back all those cool memories. So, like I was saying before, when I first joined the band, they had recorded the majority of the Fallout. So the majority of that record I'm not on. I'm not on about 85% of that record. When we signed with TVT, then they put us back into the studio and we first went in to the warehouse studio with Chad and we recorded a few songs. They didn't end up making the final cut of the record. But we had one night where we went out with Chad to celebrate, and Chad was a bit of an influence on us that night. We got racked with him. We came back to the studio. I don't even remember coming back, but the next morning, Chad showed up at the studio and they wouldn't let him in. They're like, "You're not coming in here until you pay us the cleaning bill for what you assholes did in here last night." And he was like, "What happened?" I guess there was barf all over the place. We had ripped the towel rack off the wall in the bathroom. There was banana stuck on the ceiling. So we had to pay for the cleaning
That's
bill
the biggest
before.
mystery. How did the banana get on the ceiling?
I don't know. Like I said, I don't even remember coming back. So I don't even know if I was there. I probably was. And the banana, who knows? That was probably me. The barf, that was probably Dallas. I don't know. But anyways, that was quite a wild night. But then after that, we TVT sent us down to Seattle to go record with Rick Parasher, who he did Pearl Jam 10. He'd worked with Alice in Chains. He did Temple of the Dog, right? So we were stoked. We were over the moon. We're like, holy geez, we're working with the big dogs now. This is awesome. And I remember going, we packed up Danny's parents' minivan all full of our gear, and we're going over the border, and we got stopped at the border, and they wouldn't let us across. They thought we were going down to play and to make money, and we were just kids. We were like, no, we're going down to record. We're not making money. We're putting money into you guys, right? So we weren't allowed over there until we got a note from the record label and all that kind of stuff and got it all sorted out. So, but by the time we did and we got down there, that's when we recorded "Wasting My Time," "Sick and Tired," and "Live a Lie," which,
Wow, all these
lu-
singles came after.
yeah, yeah. So, luckily for me, we did go back into the studio and because otherwise I wouldn't have been on that first record, right? So by the time that second record came out, I was pretty amped up to be on the entire record.
And when you did finish getting the entire first album together, did you know that you had something special, that there's a chance that this could really be something big?
You know, I remember when we wrote "Wasting My Time" in Danny's bedroom, and I do remember like the hair standing up on my arms when when it came together. Did I know that it was going to be that big? No. You always hope, right? I mean, that's every time you write a song, anytime any band writes a song, the hopes are that it's going to explode, that lots of people are going to hear it. But when it does actually happen, that's something else. That's something else. When you go across an ocean and people are singing the song that you wrote in your buddy's bedroom, that's special. That's undescribable, the emotions that go through you when that happens.
Would you say that's the most important song of the band's career? Because everything was built on that song.
Yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
foundation that a career was built upon.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the song that did it for us. It's the song that took us around the world, right? It's still the one that when we play it, people lose it. They love it, right? So, and man, it's it's the song that doesn't matter how many times I play that song. I'm always looking forward to playing that one in the set. And it's always, we always tuck that one at the end, right? Because you got to leave them with got to leave them with the big show. So yeah, it's that song's special. It's my favorite kid, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you allowed to have a favorite kid? I guess in the band,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
So with that song, do you remember the original pieces of that song? Do you remember if it's some chords that were played, or if it's a vocal melody that came first, or a bass riff? Do you remember kind of the shapes that first presented themselves?
Somewhat, it was a riff that Jeremy had, and he started playing it, and I just joined in. I started playing way too many notes, and the guys made me bring it back quite a bit, but still let me have reign on some melody there, as you can hear in the bass line. But yeah, that's kind of how it all came about. And then, we left that night. We wrote the music, and then Jeremy and Dallas came back afterwards, and after a night of drinking, and that's kind of how the lyrics came about was those two, hanging out afterwards.
So that song is how I discovered the band. So I was 16 when the song came out, and it was an undeniable hit in Canada, all over the radio, the music video. I remember seeing on Much Music all the time. And I just have some accolades for this single, just so our audience knows how big the song was. So it went to number one in Canada, went to number two on the Billboard mainstream rock charts in the US, number three on the modern rock charts, number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in the US. So that's the big one. So the 100 biggest songs basically in the world, regardless of genre. So number 13, it's like you're there against Justin Bieber and Nickelback and Rihanna. So, man, that is unbelievable. Number 13 on the Hot 100. And even today, it's the most popular song on Spotify, 75 million plays. Why do you think people love that song so much? I know why I love it. Why do you think people love it so much?
I I don't know. I don't know why. I think it's just the raw emotion that was there, right? Like, I don't know, none of us knew what we were doing. It was just what came out of our hearts. We were just all so new to it, and we were excited to be playing together, right? And we were all we were just all really bonding at that point, right? And it was exciting because things were starting to roll. Things had started to happen, right? But you know, why it why people grabbed onto it, I don't know. I'd like to hear your take on it and why, from an outside point of view, because being on the inside, like I said, every song that you write, there's other songs that we wrote that, you know, honestly, I like better, right? And that I thought that they would be bigger songs than wasting my time. But obviously that one struck a chord.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of reasons. For the music, there's the catchy guitar riff. Your bass line in the verses is super catchy as well. So you got different hooks happening. It's a great vocal performance. So the vocals are undeniably great and very strong. I think that it does a perfect job of straddling the line between heavy but still pop and polished, so it can get played alongside the Stains and the Linkin Parks, but it can also cross over to more of the pop charts, and it did do that. So I think you kind of, without knowing it, you kind of checked off all the boxes that would allow it to get played everywhere. And if you have good headphones on, you're hearing all this ear candy from the magic of each instrument adding its own element to it.
Okay, yeah, you know what? And all of us are big fans of, we were all children of the radio, right? So, whatever was popular and on the airwaves, we were all big fans of, right? So, we're all fans of popular music and melody and hooks. And, we had some great guidance. We had we had some good mentors, right? Like Chad is the best in the business at it. And, although he didn't have anything to do with that song, we were still massively influenced by him and, his songwriting abilities, right? It's just undeniable how good he is at it. So yeah, that rubbed off on us for sure.
So the album went platinum in Canada, and then 7 months later goes platinum in the US. Do you remember receiving the news that the album had gone gold and then platinum?
Yeah, I do. I felt like a bit of a a dick because we got we got our gold award, and it was one of those skinny ones. I don't know if you've seen it, um, but it has a disc, right, a CD in it, and I was like, oh, "What the hell is this?" I'm like, "I want a record." Right? Like I was used to seeing, the big records that Kiss would have, right? That's what I wanted, not this little plaque. So the next one we got was, it's on my floor here right now, actually. It fell off my wall, but that one is, yeah, that one's the 500,000. That one's the American one. So that's what they gave us because of me bitching.
I had a recent guest that said it's so funny, the exact same thing as you. They got the little CD showing the album went gold or platinum, and they were like, "What the hell? I want an album." And then they were disappointed because when they got the album, I don't know if it fell or it broke. And when they got the actual gold album out of it and they turned it over, it's just a recycled, like it was like a Foreigner album or like some recycled album that is not made like specifically for the artist. It's like, okay, what's not selling? Okay, put a gold coat on that. So it kind of, the Wizard of Oz, they lifted the curtain. They're like, oh no, this isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah, totally. I have no idea what's under this one, but I mean, I don't care. It looks cool, and luckily, because I was worried that, oh man, like that might be the only one that I get, right? So I'm super happy that, I've got a couple more. We got a platinum one, and yeah, so I'm very grateful and very thankful for being able to achieve what we achieved when we did, because that's just not a possibility anymore, right? Like nobody's selling records, so I mean, it's different. People still get the awards, right? But nobody's selling those numbers in records anymore. And it was changing at that point, right? That's when, Napster came out, and yeah, they sent me one of these here for what is it? Most played Napster live session. It's like, thanks guys, for ruining our industry. So they sent me a nice
But
glass
at least they
cat
gave
note.
you a plaque. Yeah.
Yeah,
That one little plaque is worth like $4 million in downloads that weren't paid for.
exactly. Yeah. I think I could probably pawn it for maybe $3.
We'll take what they give us.
Yeah.
Can you share what your life was like at the very peak of the success of that album? So the album sells 1 million copies. The song is a massive hit. There's three more singles. Can you picture kind of a moment where it's the absolute peak of that experience? Most people will never experience anything like that. Can you kind of let us into what that is like? We have a lot of musicians that listen to these episodes and they're just dreaming of man to have a gold or platinum album or a number one single.
It was it was awesome. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was one of the most amazing moments of my life, right? I remember getting the platinum album when we did Edgefest in Barrie, and were playing to 20,000 people, and my parents were there, and we got awarded our platinum discs, and my dad cried. It's getting me all choked up, like, and I mean, that was the moment, right? Where it's just like, holy shit, I did it. I made my parents proud. I proved them wrong. It was awesome. It was like everything at that point was just turning up Millhouse. It was just going great. I had my first kid, and my first daughter, and that completely changed my life. Um, and yeah, we were playing huge places, we're traveling everywhere, and it was like one thing after another, we were playing all these different TV shows. We're playing The Tonight Show and, playing Cold Pizza in New York and the Carson Daly Show and being on MTV. Going to Much Music for the first time was a massive thing for me, right? Like all of these things that were just like, I was just checking off the list, like, holy crap, like I did that. Whoa, wow, this is fantastic. Like, what's tomorrow gonna bring? It was just, it was amazing.
And Tomorrow brought a Juno Award for Best New Artist. What did that mean to you? Canada's Grammys acknowledging your hard work, your talent, your music.
It was, it was fantastic. That was one of those moments in your life where you just kind of shake your head and wonder, how did I just get here? How did this how did this happen? Why me? Why did I get so lucky, right? And I remember going up and getting that award and how terrifying it was, how utterly scared I was to get up in front of all those people. And all I had to say was thank you to all of our friends and family back home. I can't even remember what I said, but whatever it was, I could barely speak. I could barely get those words out of my mouth, right? And I just remember the terror that was going through my body at that point, and excitement at the same time, right? It was like this massive ball of emotion that was happening. And we had a blast. We couldn't have had more fun at the Junos if we tried. We stayed up all night. We partied as hard as you possibly could with,
Were any bananas harmed in the partying?
not that night. There were there we did tell this story the other day in an interview where Jeremy he peed out of a window. So he was dared to pee out of the window of the bar that we were at, and so he punched out the screen window, and then peed out that window, and then had a shot of tequila, and then was puking out that same window about 2 minutes later.
He's an opportunist. The window's already gone.
Yeah.
You learned a lesson. Never dare Jeremy to do something.
Oh God, no, no.
So I have to point out that it normally takes a band at least 5 years to really reach their prime. And you guys started in 99, and by 2001, you have all the success we're talking about. That might be the most meteoric rise I've ever seen from a new band to platinum status. Did it feel like a whirlwind? Did it feel like things were happening quickly, or were you just in the moment and maybe it didn't all sink in while it was happening?
It's no, it didn't feel like it happened overnight because, I'd been in so many bands before this, right? So, when somebody says, "Oh yeah, you guys were an overnight success," it's like, "Yeah, well that took me like 10, 15 years to get to that point," right? So, yeah, no, it felt like, we would always say it was the hurry up and wait game, right? I quit my job way too early. We got the record deal, and then, I thought it was Mr. Big Shot, and first I think it was Jeremy that quit his, or I think Dallas quit first, then Jeremy quit, and then I quit like weeks before I was about to get married. My parents didn't know. My now ex-wife, her parents didn't know. I can't remember who it was, but somebody said to them on my wedding day, "So, how does it feel to have an unemployed musician as a son-in-law?" And my parents were there and they're like, "What? You quit your job?" I'm like, "Yeah, got a record deal.
Can
You
we talk
know,
about this
money truck's
tomorrow?
backing up any day now." And that took a long time for that money truck to back up, let me tell you. It was a few years. So, it was we were out on the road, it and granted at the same time, I do say that it took a while, but when things started to roll, then yeah, it did start going really quick, right? We did our first cross Canada tour and we had been playing shows, in town. We would do the odd fly out show here and there. And then we did our first cross Canada tour and we were in a small little RV and we went from from here all the way to Montreal and Quebec. And it was just gradually getting bigger as we went along. And then I remember getting to Montreal and Quebec, and there were 12 people each in the audience. And it was like, oh man, that was a bit of a letdown to, this trajectory that we were on. And then we came home, and then it was like a couple weeks after that and wasting just blew up. And we found ourselves now in a tour bus and going across Canada and playing arenas with Nickelback. So that was jarring. That was a massive eye opener for us because we had no idea what to expect then, right? Like we had a crew of two guys and we're playing arenas. So we had our tour manager, who was our front of house guy, and tour manager, and then one tech that was doing everything on stage, right? And he was brand new as well. So, we couldn't have been more green. We played Calgary, played the Saddle Dome there, and we had to stop and restart a song 3 times because it was just like, oh man, I remember Nickelback being pissed at us and being like, way to bring the crowd down, fellas. We're like, what can we say? Like we don't know what the hell we're doing.
You learned on the job quickly there.
You did. Yeah. As I always say, we got thrown into the deep end without any water wings, right? Just learn to swim.
So just a few more things about the Fallout album. So Deny also went to number 1 in Canada, number 7 on the rock charts in the US. I wanted to point out a couple deeper cuts. So Seize the Day and Faded both sound like they'd be a lot of fun to play on the bass. Are there any default songs that you look down at the set list and you're like, oh man, can't wait to play that song?
Yeah. I would say Sick and Tired. That one's one of my favorite ones to play. And Count on Me. Those are as far as the ones that are still in the set list. And then, of course, Wasting My Time too. But those are the two that are probably the most fun to play. As far as deep cuts go, Get Out of This, that one I really enjoyed playing. We don't play that one anymore. All Over Me, that was another fun one to play as well. It was fast and punky and um, yeah, I guess those ones there would be the ones I always look forward to.
So in 2003, you guys release Allocation. There's 3 singles, Taking My Life Away, Throw It All Away, and All She Wrote. All 3 songs were top 40 hits in the US. The album goes to number 3 on Billboard's independent albums charts and is certified gold in Canada. Did you guys feel massive pressure having to follow up the success of the previous album?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. It was yeah, it's always scary. It's always scary every time you release a song, right? And when you release a new record, that's even more scary because you're just like, how's it going to be received? How's it going to sell? And looking back at that record too, I think that we were all in agreement that we really kind of shit the bed on that record. Um, we were kind of cocky We just came off a really successful record, and those songs kind of came easy to us. And then when we went to go and record Elocation, I think we had 7 songs in total, and Taking My Life Away was the only one that was fully written. And we were just like, we'll write it when we're in the studio. Stupid. Absolutely asinine when you think about that, right? It's like what a money suck that is. When Danny and I work with bands now, it's all about pre-production, right? It's all about getting your songs dialed in before you go into the studio. Don't waste time in there, right? And we were young and dumb and thought we had it figured out. And it was not the right way to do it. And the proof was in the pudding because that album just didn't do near as good, right? We didn't have the huge song, and maybe if we had have taken a little bit more time and you know honed in on those songs a little bit more, right? Like there were a couple songs that we wrote fully in the studio, and then we also did throw it all away with Chad. So like after we finished recording the record, it still didn't feel strong enough. So we went and did that song with Chad. And then we did a couple songs down in Atlanta with Butch Walker, which was really awesome working with him. Um, yeah, and then by the third record, I think that's when we kind of, that was when I think that's when we hit our stride. That's when we really became a band. That's when we had figured it out a little bit more. We became a little heavier. We started messing around with some drop tuning, some open C tuning, or drop C, I should say, not open C. Uh, and yeah, I think the songs just got the, I think you can really hear it on that record, right? It just sounds it if you listen to the two records back to back, the second record, Elocation, just it sounds like it was rushed. It sounds like, you know, we uh we fully didn't know what we were doing. But there's a couple gems in there, I'd say.
So you cover the Jeff Buckley song Cruel, and you get a little help from Gordie Johnson. You had mentioned earlier you were big Sugar fans. You can see his face here on the wall. How do you choose that specific cover to do on the album, and how does Gordie Johnson get involved?
Well, funny enough, it was Lenny Johnson, our A&R guy, who brought that song to the table. And he was like, guys, I think you guys would kill this song. So, we're Dallas is a fan of Jeff Buckley, and it was an obscure song. It was not one of the more better known ones that he's done. So, yeah, I don't know that song. We really liked it. So, we went with it. And how we got Gordy was we called him up and we asked him. We did that tour with him, so we really got along well with him and his band, and we want him to. We thought he would be perfect to play the solo on that song, and what a cool guest appearance, right? Like, he's just one of the best, the best in Canada, I think. And he's just an awesome guitar player. But forget Canada, like he's one of the best, I'd say, just out there, period.
Yeah, it's wild because everyone knows him as one of the great guitar players. And then as I'm preparing for my interview with him, you find out that he was actually a super accomplished bass player to start and then transition to guitar. Like he's originally a bass player. Yeah, that caught me off guard that he was a super in-demand bass player for live shows, for sessions, and then he transitions over to guitar because maybe there's more opportunities or something like that.
Silly guy.
Then he just takes over another instrument altogether.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to hear his bass stuff because. it's a testament on his guitar playing. I mean, geez, makes sense.
So that album gets nominated for another Juno. So instead of Best New Artist this time, it's for Rock Album of the Year. Did that mean something different to you? That it's not just, oh, you had a big year and you have the most potential as a new artist, and that's what you guys won the Juno for. This time it was for the actual music that you had recorded.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who we lost out to that year, but yeah, it
Probably
just
Nickelback.
probably.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's obviously an honor to be um, to be nominated for anything like that, to be up for an award, to be recognized for the work that you've done and the music that you've made with your friends. It's yeah, it's an absolute honor to get recognized for anything like that.
So speaking of making music with friends, I have some kind words sent in from Danny Craig, drummer for Default. He gets a little nasty here. So this is what Danny says. He says, "My bro Dave, I always describe him to others as one of the nicest people I know. He's a wicked talent, not only on the bass, but also with visuals and art. He's got more friends than a mushroom dealer at a Grateful Dead concert and a reasonably sized schlong, which I saw once in a video of him taking a shit on a bull's skull. Dave, I'm proud to call you my dear brother in rhythm." So there you go, Danny.
Man, yeah, you know what? Danny is he's one of my best friends of all time. He stood up in both of my weddings, and if you know Danny, you just can't help but love the guy, right? Like he's just one of the most lovable people you'd ever meet. And he was the guy who I really bonded with in the band. Um, when I first joined the band, I lived down in Vancouver. Those guys lived out in Langley, and I would have to catch the SkyTrain out to Langley or out to Surrey every day because we rehearsed 5 days a week. So I'd catch the SkyTrain out. He'd come and pick me up, take me to rehearsal, and then he'd drive me back. I'd get back on the SkyTrain, go home, work, come back the next day. And, through that, we just became real good buds. We were he was always the guy that, if we had to share rooms with, he was always my roommate. And, yeah, now we're label mates. And, just ever since we started this band, he's not just one of my best friends. I consider him as I consider the other guys. I consider them family and my brothers.
So in 2005, you guys release your third album, One Thing Remains. Four singles, Count on Me, I Can't Win, The Way We Were, It Only Hurts. The album goes to number 7 on the Billboard Independent Albums charts in the US. Count on Me and I Can't Win were top 15 hits in Canada. Earlier, you mentioned that you thought that the band had written some songs that were maybe even better than Wasting My Time. I think Count on Me is possibly the band's greatest song. I think it's one of my favorite songs from the band, maybe my favorite, period. To me, that sounded like a worthy follow up to Wasting My Time. Like if there's another song that you had written that should be the biggest song in the world, it's Count on Me. What are your thoughts when you think about that song? Also, the bass is awesome in that song.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I would agree with you. I thought that song was going to be as big, if not bigger. And it's unfortunate because even our record label admitted to us later on, they're like, yeah, sorry, we kind of shit the bed on that one. And we're like, yeah, you kind of did, right? Like you had an undeniable hit there and you were unable to make it pop, right? So, um, yeah, there's a bit of a funny story behind that one too, because we were initially recording that song with Rich Robinson from the Black Crowes. and we went into the studio with him and did a few tracks um, that didn't end up making the record because they just audibly didn't match tone wise to the rest of it. Um, but that song, it started out as a ballad, and when we were in the studio with Rich, it just didn't feel like it was coming together. It just wasn't. We still hadn't written that chorus, that big moment in that song. And so when Rich went to the hotel that night, I think it was Dallas got on the phone and he called up Chad and he was like, "Hey Chad, we're having a we're having some problems here with this song. You mind coming down and, giving us a hand with it?" So he's like, "Yeah, sure." So he came down and I remember I had stepped out and I had to go deal with something with my computer. And when I came back, they were like, "You want to hear what we did?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then that's when that chorus happened, and the riff and everything, right? And it was like, holy shit. Okay, when Rich comes back tomorrow, we'll just tell him we're not feeling the song and that we're just gonna work on the other two, and we'll finish this one with Chad. And then we ended up going out to his studio, and that's when we wrote the rest of it. And I remember sitting there for a long time with that bass line, and yeah, when the whole song finally came together, it was just like, yeah, yeah, this we got something good here.
And this is the album where the Rolling Stones were in a different studio, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that was the only song that we ended up doing with Chad. Like I said, the songs that we did with Rich, I got them somewhere. I don't know where they are. It'd be interesting to pull them out now and listen to them. But yeah, we ended up going down to LA to record with Bob Marlette, and he had just finished doing the Saliva records, so that was we had excuse me, we had the same management at the time, us and Nickelback and Saliva, and so that was kind of our in with Bob. And when we went down and met him, we really gelled with him and really got along with him. He came up to my place and we wrote the record in my basement. I had a little studio at the time, and yeah, it was he was he was a really cool producer to work with because he was that guy that was like he he just kind of let us be us, right? He was like, I remember him telling me, he was just like, just play your heart out, like don't hold back. Play as much as you want because we can always take stuff out, right? But, you're the bass. It's another instrument, it's another source for melody. And I was always like, yeah, it is. Heck yeah. So I loved working with Bob. He was and then we ended up doing the fourth record with him as well.
You mentioned earlier that on a early tour, Montreal had let you down. You got there, there was 12 people. Well, I was at a show in Montreal October 29th, 2005. I saw you guys at the Spectrum in Montreal with Stain. So you were in support of the album we're talking about. Stain was in support of Chapter 5. Stain is one of my all-time favorite bands. And it was packed. It was probably sold out. There were thousands of people. So Montreal redeemed themselves for you guys later on.
Yeah, they did, and I think it was just, the fact that at that point, I don't know if Wasting had probably hit the airwaves yet in Quebec, right? So, we've played there quite a few times since, and we've never played to only 12 people ever again there, but it's always been a good time. I love going there. It's a beautiful place. Love going and getting the smoked meat sandwiches there, and it's yeah, it's great. I remember being there the first time we went there. I remember going to the strip clubs, and we were just all like astonished. We're like, you can get buffet here? What is up with this place? You can sit there and eat a roast beef sandwich and watch the ladies dance. Like this is different than back home. We're not in Kansas anymore.
So in 2009, you guys released the album Comes and Goes. There's five more singles. Two of them were top 10 hits in Canada. The album was number 10 on Billboard's top hard rock albums in the US. You mentioned before, also produced by Bob Marlette. Can you talk about the weird stuff that started to happen with the record label? So TVT goes bankrupt, and that puts everything in limbo for you guys. This album comes out, there's a longer period between the last album and this album than any other album you've put out. So it delayed things. Can you talk about that process and if you guys start to get worried if things will ever work out with the label?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was honestly that album. It feels like a dark period. It certainly in my life, anyways. Um, it was kind of the beginning of the end, right? It was the downhill swing of it all. Um, when we were recording that album, I went through a divorce. Dallas went through a divorce. So like things were starting to fall apart kind of everywhere, right? Um, and yeah, that happened, and obviously, that was a real crappy point in my life. And then, but I was thinking, I've got this record, and that was my one beacon of light. And I was like, well, I'm gonna bury myself in work, and I'm gonna just go out on the road, and I'm just gonna try and enjoy being a musician and concentrate on that. And then, 3 weeks after we got home, the label went bankrupt, and it was like, oh, you gotta be shitting me. And then a bunch of other stuff, kind of happened. Our business manager passed away, and we found out that there were a um, whole bunch of checks that hadn't been cashed. There was he hadn't paid taxes on the band in Canada since the beginning, so we owed the government a crap ton of money. And yeah, it was looking really hopeless. It took us, I believe it was like 5 years to get that record back because it was seized by a bank, right? It was part of TVT's assets. And in hindsight, it's probably good that it happened when it did happen, because it really would have sucked if we had to release that record and then weeks after they went bankrupt, and then the album would have just went right. So at least we had the chance to get it back, and then EMI, they bought the rights to it and released the record, right? So it took the wind out of our sails, because it was a long time that we went without having any kind of material, right? And luckily, we had a good booking agent at the time that kept the lights on at home, kept us on the road, kept us touring, playing shows and stuff like that. But, it was just kind of, you just, it was gray. It was dark. It was not fun, and then by the end of it, we went out and we toured the States, and we did a tour with Hinder, My Darkest Days, and Saving Abel. And we came home, we didn't make a dime. We were gone for like 5 weeks. And that was kind of the writing on the wall, right? It was like, how can we survive? We can't survive off of being away that long. We've now got mortgages, child support payments, and cars and stuff like that we have to pay for. We can't be going out and making money for other people and us not coming home with anything, right? So yeah, that album, There's a lot of songs on there I like, but it's hard to listen to because, the just what we were going through at that time.
So I have something that might cheer you up. So I have some kind words sent in from someone, maybe the only other person on the planet that knows your bass as intricately as you do. This is from Josh Muda, who's the bass tech for Default, and he sent in some words. He says, on or off the stage, Dave stands out as a remarkable human being. He's like a big kid and would do anything to play a show almost every day. The way he connects with a crowd and his ability to draw them in and create a positive feedback loop is inspiring and completely authentic. He values his family above all, his relationship with his wife and kids. To his friends, he's as loyal as it gets and always good for a great story and some good laughs. He's always evolving, always creating, and always inspiring others every day. He's one of the people that's really helped me grow. This is life changing growth, and I consider it a great fortune to have him in my life. I always look forward to adventures with Dave. That's from Josh.
Uh, and yeah, Josh, he's a special guy. He he came into my life when I started this side project called Bonds of Mara. And he was friends of Sal Costa, who was the guitar player for My Darkest Days and the guitar player for Bonds of Mara. And I really connected with Josh. He's the kind of guy that and he'll do anything for his friends. He's just, and talk about a loyal guy. He's as loyal as it gets. And he's been coming out and helping us, and he's really earned his way into our camp and into the hearts of everybody within Default, right? Because I brought him in from the Bonds days, and yeah, everybody loves him. Everybody loves having him around. He's a great guy, and I feel honored that he's my buddy and that he's got my back and that he's the one there handing me bases. And yeah, yeah, man, he's a great dude.
So the band took a hiatus from 2013 to 2018. What was your life like during those 5 years? Was it challenging, maybe for the first time, you having to figure out who is Dave if he's not the bass player for Default? Everyone kind of has an identity that they latch to, and suddenly you're not that person. Was that challenging, or was it liberating for you to become whoever you wanted to be, to pursue new passions?
It was very challenging for me. I'd like to say that it wasn't, but yeah, that it was my identity. It was who I felt anyways. I felt that that's who I was. And it was tough because it was the only thing that I knew too, right? It was 13 years of just being the bass player for Default. And, foolishly, I didn't have that backup plan. And that really hurt me in the end, right? I struggled because, you always hope that things are going to turn around and that you're going to get your, as I would call it, your Disney moment, right? That that point where it's just like everything turns around and it gets better, and wow, we've just risen up from the ashes, right? But it didn't happen the way that I was hoping it would. And I had to go back to school. I was 35 years old. And yeah, it was really rough trying to figure out what the next chapter of my life was going to be, right? And to the whole feeling of going from doing what you had worked your entire life to get to, right? To only have it be kicked out from underneath you was scary and it was jarring. And I mean, it was, when I found out eventually, what I was going to do, it became exciting. But, at the beginning, it was terrifying. Like I said, I didn't have any schooling. So I started painting for a friend and, I think I was making like 12 bucks an hour. So, I remember getting my first paycheck and just being like, holy shit, I made more in per diems in a week than I made in 2 weeks, busting my nut, right? Like it was eye-opening, right? And I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life now? So, you know, I would, I thought I've got to do something that I love, something that I've got a passion for, because that's what drove me to this. So, my wife, she got me into photography, and through that, I was like, okay, well, what else could I do? So I started looking into graphic design. I went to school for graphic design, and that's when things got exciting again, right? Because like the thought of going back to school was terrifying at 35 years old. And also I hated school when I was in it, right? Like high school and all that. I couldn't wait to get out. And now I'm going back into it, but when you go back into school for something that you like and something that you have a passion and a drive for, it's it's not as shitty as you remember it, right? So, yeah, that was cool and that was exciting. Until I got out into the real world, and then I got hired by BC Hydro um, when I was still in school, and that was man, talk about a polar opposite, right? I went from, touring the world to now having the most corporate job that I could possibly get. I showed up for my first day of work because I had nothing else in a 70s leisure suit and an Ozzy Osbourne Bark at the Moon lunch kit. I was so out of place there. And it was by the end of it, I it had transformed me and changed me into somebody that I really didn't like. It was I had become like the poster boy for H&M, and I'm like, what the hell? I used to wear ripped jeans and concert shirts and have goofy hair, and now I'm like the button-up shirt guy and khaki pants. Like, what has happened to me? I'm not the same guy anymore, right? And that's when I decided that I had to make a shift and get out of that. And I vowed to myself to never ever go back to anything corporate ever again. And luckily I haven't. So, but yeah, in a nutshell, it was rough. It was really rough.
Well, things got better in 2018. Default starts to perform together again. There's tours with Stone Temple Pilots and Seether. There's a 6-song EP. Can you share what brought the band back together again, and then why the EP is called Recuts for our listeners?
Well, what got the band back together was, I credit it to Nick Minema, who's our booking agent. He's always been just such a big default fan and a flag waver for us. And he wanted to see us get back together. So from what I heard, he wanted to make this tour up so that we would play again. And that's what it was. How could you not say yes to going out with one of the greatest bands on the planet, right? So that was my Disney moment. That was like the turning point that when I thought that all of this was in the rear view mirror, because it was 6 years. It had been 6 years since we had played together. So, you know, and Dallas having such a successful career, I just thought it was done. That's it. I got the memories. That's awesome. But, when we got that, it was, it was there again, it was it was a really dark moment in my life at that point. Um, my sister was in a car accident and she was killed, and it happened within like days of one another, right? The accident happened and then we got the tour, and it was like such a contrast of like the worst possible thing that has ever happened to me to one of the most amazing gifts that I'd ever been re-given again, right? So it, these things I really feel like they happen for a reason, right? And it took that really tragic event and brought some light into my life, right? And it gave me something wonderful to look forward to, and something, a beacon of light, right? And my all the guys in the band, they all rallied around me, and excuse me, it was yeah, it it was the best thing that could have happened for me at that point in my life. So yeah,
Well,
sorry to get heavy there on you.
no, that's why we have the deep dive conversations here. And I think what we need is some kind words from Trevor Hurst from Econoline Crush. So Trevor says Dave's energy and enthusiasm for life is inspirational. Dave reminds me with almost every social media post why I got into playing and writing music. It's fun, it's creative, and music can change the world. I feel privileged, honored to call him a peer and a friend. So that's from Trevor Hurst.
Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome. That warms my heart. That it's it those hearing those kind of messages from your peers and from your friends, those those are some of the best things some of the best compliments that one could ever have, and especially from people that you looked up to, and that that you consider, larger than life, and people that kind of that molded you, and who you are and why you want to do these things. So yeah, yeah, I really appreciate all those kind words.
There hasn't been any new default music since the Recuts EP in 2018. So, as a 24-year fan of Default, I have to ask, is there any chance that there could be new music in the future? Whether it's just one song or an EP or an album, you can tell me to take a bus. You can tell me there's an NDA involved, but I have to ask on behalf of all the Default fans that are listening.
Yeah, you know what? We're talking about it. We've definitely talked um about doing, maybe not a whole record, but maybe a song or two. I certainly hope that it happens. I'd love to see what would come out of us now, right? Because it's
Well, the
been
growth that all four of you guys are such professional musicians now. I mean, you can't even fathom what the four of you together would create today.
oh, we're completely different human beings, than what we were in 2007, that was the last time we wrote a song together, right? So, we've all grown, we've all evolved, our musical tastes have all changed. So, to see what that would look like is, to me, that's exciting. That's super exciting. There's nothing more that I,
You might write the next The Wall or Sergeant Pepper's, you know, it's you might have that all-time great album coming.
oh, wouldn't that be nice? I mean, I'd just be happy to get creative again with my brothers, and even if it was just for us, I'd be happy, you know, just to get into the studio and do it. It's being back together with these guys and performing and being on stage with one another. There's a bond there that we have that, I don't have with anybody else on this planet. So yeah, the thought of doing it for me, I'd love to see it.
So I've been following you guys on social media, and man, the last 3 months, you've had a bunch of shows and festivals. It looks like the crowds are great, they're enthusiastic, and you have some upcoming shows. So on August 22nd, you play the Shake the Lake Festival in Regina, Saskatchewan. Also on the bill, Finger 11, Helix, Headstones, Trooper, and the Stampeders. And then just a few days later, August 31st, the Velocity Music Fest. This is in Dyersville, Iowa. Also on the bill, Nickelback, Brantley Gilbert, and Buck Cherry. If our listeners right now go and purchase a ticket to one of these two shows, what can they expect from Default in concert?
Uh, I mean, you did expect to see a bunch of the hits, you know, um, and just a bunch of guys that are grateful. We're happy. We're happy to be up there. And I think there's a different chemistry now, even than what there was before, because we are so thankful. We're so thankful that all of us are still here to play with one another. And just so we get this opportunity, the opportunity to play for people, and the fact that people are coming out and people are enjoying themselves. It brings that energy to us. It brings it to me. I know that, right? Like there's nothing better than looking out into that crowd and seeing smiling faces and seeing people sing along to your songs. Like that's the single most best thing in the entire world to me.
So we have a fan question sent in. This is from Luke Smearshniak. Hopefully I didn't butcher that last name. And Luke's question is, what were some of your favorite bands to tour with over the years? I already know one of them from back in the day. We had talked about it not too long ago, but I'd be fascinated to hear some more, along with maybe some of your favorite tour memories. So that's from Luke.
Hey, Luke. Um, yeah, some of my favorite bands to tour with. Probably my favorite one was, and this the one that Luke and I had talked about, was Injected. Love those guys. They were just so much fun to tour with and to hang out with. We had a real bond with that band. When we first showed up, it was the Campus Invasion tour, the MTV Campus Invasion tour. It was us, Nickelback, Saliva, Injected, and Star Sailor. And the first day of the tour, the Injected guys came over to our bus with a case of beer and a bottle of Maker's Mark. And we're like, oh, you guys are our people, and right away, we just became fast friends with those guys. We bought we bought these BMX bikes that we put under the bay of the bus, and we would ride around all the campuses with our bikes, and we had ourselves a little bike gang, and we called ourselves the Biciclette del Diablos, and I was Diablo Unos.
Very intimidating name. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we were
La
super into
bicicleta.
it. Yeah. So yeah, those guys, they were a hoot. Um, the Nickelback guys, obviously, we had so much fun with those guys. Um, man, like every band that we've been out with, there's something there. There's something, you know, every band I've enjoyed being out there every single time. The guys from Trick Turner, I love those guys too. They were a lot of fun to be with. Um, yeah, Big Sugar, that was definitely a treat for us. Um, man, just so fortunate to play with so many great bands. Bush, that was a fun tour as well. You
Mr.
know, that was
Rossdale.
it was so surreal. That was right at the beginning of our touring, and that was one of the big concerts that we or sorry, big tours that we did. And I remember just like, the band that I played with in Kelowna, we covered like three Bush songs. And then here I am opening up for this band, right? I remember telling Gavin that and just being like this is so trippy for me right now. I'm like, I used to cover a bunch of your songs and now I'm opening up for you guys. Like, how cool is that? Moments like that where you're just like, pinch me. What is going on? Like, you know, I'm such a huge fan of music. I love music to my core, and I'm a huge nerd when it comes to it, right? Like, man, I can't remember my neighbor's name, but I can tell you every band member that's been in Kiss. Like those names I can remember, and my music trivia goes pretty deep. These musicians, they you look up to them and they seem like superheroes to you, right? And then you find yourself bumping elbows with them, right? Like I was once in Boston, and Danny and I were doing this. We were at the Sam Adams Brewery, and we are going table to table and doing all these radio interviews from all over the country. And I got a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it was Gene Simmons, and he goes, "Hey, this girl here says that she knows you," and I was like, holy shit, it's the God of Thunder. I didn't see that one coming at all. Right. And like, I'm just completely awestruck. And, moments like that where you're just like, this, like, how do I tell my buddies back home about this? I got to, I got to hang out at Vinnie Paul's house once, and I'm a massive Pantera fan. I've got a Cowboys from Hell tattoo on the back of my leg. I've got a good story about that too. But I called my best friend from Vinny's front porch, and I'm like, dude, you'll never believe where I am. I'm hanging out at Vinny Paul's house. And he's like, fuck you, man. Right. But it was so that evening, Vinny, he he gives me this Pantera jersey, and it's got Pantera across the front. It's a baseball jersey. It's got Pantera across the front, and on the back, it's got the Cowboys from Hell logo. And he goes, "Hey, man, only the band and the crew get these shirts." He goes, "I want to give this to you to give to Chad." And I was like, "Damn it!"
So close.
So I'm like, "Sure, I'll give it to him." The next night, I was wearing it on stage. I didn't give it to Chad. The guilt got to me, and I finally was like, Chad, I'm sorry. Vinny gave me this jersey to give to you, but I really didn't want to give it to you. And he's like, don't worry about it. I got enough stuff. So
You've been
I
warming
still
up
have,
the jersey this whole time, and someday you'll give it to him. Just perfectly warmed up. That's all. Just you're delaying it.
oh no, it's going in a frame for sure. Yeah.
Final three questions. When you
All
look
right.
back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
I guess what I'm most proud of, well, I would have to say my children, my kids. They're those are the things I'm the most proud of. But as far as career wise and music goes, um, I don't know. I'd have to say that the third default record would be my, the crowning moment. That, like I said, that's where I feel like we hit our stride and where we really became a band. Um, and I'd never want to discredit Wasting because, that is what made my career. So, that I'm extremely proud of. And then what was the other question?
And
Sorry.
what are you grateful for when looking back on
What
your
am I
career?
grateful for? I'm grateful for it all. I'm grateful for I'm grateful I'm grateful for I guess I'm really grateful for, that Coastal Ford job and for meeting Jeremy and for, the journey that it took me on. And every one of those moments I'm grateful for. And I'm super grateful for what I have now and for the shows that I get to play and grateful for the people that show up. I'm so grateful for that.
And if you could sit down next to your 10-year-old self and you could whisper words of advice, taking everything you've learned since 10 years old, all the lessons and mentorship and experiences and the highs and lows and the successes and failures, if you could whisper words of advice to cute little Dave sitting there to help guide him through this human experience, what do you say to him?
Well, I would say practice more.
Slap
You
at the
know,
base.
that's right. I would say practice more. Um, and I would say have a backup plan, and that backup plan would, I would say to myself, figure it out within what you love, right? So my backup plan would be, you know, getting involved in doing the art side of things in music, right? And doing that earlier on so that I had that safety net, so that I didn't have that panic moment, so that I could switch gears easier, right? That would be the biggest one for sure.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans that have supported you over the last 26 years?
Thank you. God bless you. I love you. Please stick with me for another 26 because I want to keep doing this and I want to see all your beautiful faces.